All right, folks. Welcome to the Gritty Podcast. Coming at you from... All right, folks. Welcome to the Gritty Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Call. And my co-host is my brother, Brent Call, also known as the Gritty Broman.
Hey, guys.
And today's podcast is with Ryan Lampers, a.k.a. Stealthy Hunter.
Is that how you say that?
I think I like just calling him Stealthy Hunter, but the healthy part, healthy.
It's a little critical.
It's pretty cool, actually. His wife came out with it. It wasn't Ryan. It was Dr. Hillary Lampers that came up with that. Makes more sense. So Ryan and I just got back from a Coues deer hunt in Arizona. Great hunt. Awesome time. Ryan is one of those people, if you follow him on Instagram at Stealthy Hunter, which is ST Healthy Hunter, all one word. If you follow him on Instagram and you followed any of his exploits, Ryan tends to kill very mature, older animals on every hunt he goes on. And a lot of those hunts are public land. A lot of them are easy draw or over-the-counter type hunts. And he consistently is able to go out there and find old, mature animals and harvest those. He's a very interesting person, very quiet. He's introverted, keeps to himself a little bit or a lot.
He claims to be introverted.
It's not really a claim. It's pretty clear if you've hung out with Ryan.
He does say his number one trick for being successful is hunting solo.
Yeah. So it's interesting. If you look up introverts, I Googled why introverts are better than extroverts. And I grew up, my mother's an extreme introvert, our mother. It says introverts tend to have an easier time distinguishing their thoughts and feelings from others. Introverts don't go around annoying everyone. No need for problems working with introverts. They'd rather work alone. And that's pretty classic too. On this podcast, you'll hear Ryan talk about hunting Coues deer and hunting just big, mature mule deer, elk, that Ryan does feel that a lot of his success is linked to the fact that he hunts solo. Mm-hmm. And there's a certain amount of success that comes with that. And he kind of details why he believes that. And I think he's spot on. That's definitely tied to his personality though. Like I think an extrovert might be bored out of their mind doing what Ryan does. And it says introverts tend to be better at things like spelling and grammar.
Psh, not important. Not important.
That's not exactly a sexy, attribute of an introvert, but hey, anyway, Ryan's an awesome guy. And, this podcast we recorded actually in the desert, the Sonoran Desert, up on a hillside as we were glassing for, Quadamundi, which was it's our nemesis right now. And, as we both tagged out on Coues deer bucks.
Mm-hmm. Ryan is obsessed with Quadamundi.
He wants a quaddy so bad.
He is obsessed. He says he Googles it because he wants to find out more about it. Oh, yeah. The first thing that pops up is your ugly mug.
Yeah, I'm like So anyway, there is a little brief interruption during the podcast because a coyote comes into the water hole that we're sitting over.
You guys are actively glassing and a coyote pops in.
Yeah, and so we kind of abandoned the podcast and
what happened? Because you guys don't recap it in the podcast.
What happened was...
I'm assuming you didn't get
Ryan missed.
Oh, is that what happened?
But in his defense, it was a tricky shot. But I hope you guys enjoy the podcast. I received a lot of personal, like direct messages in Instagram, a lot of comments in email. I asked people to send me... I have something like 50 or 60 questions for Ryan Lampers that are in the queue now. And Ryan and I are going to get together and explore those questions. And so I will be answering the questions that you guys all sent in. Appreciate the feedback and the questions you sent in. But on today's podcast, we cover a couple of those questions that came in, and I hope you like it. So before we get into that, Brent, you had 2 questions that came in.
Yeah, I had a couple questions. And also, I'm going through the questions, letting people know every day. I'm looking at all of our forums. So if you have any questions, iTunes, YouTube, email, however, and we'll work our best to get as many of them as we can. I have 2 questions here. One is from a gentleman named Matthew Moon.
Okay.
And the subject is soap.
Yeah.
So I noticed on your latest podcast with Aaron that you mentioned you didn't use deodorant, and you guys changed to natural soaps, etc. Can you elaborate on that issue or point me to an episode which you discussed this? I'm very interested in this topic. Brian, I know for a long time you've ditched traditional soap. You don't use real shampoo. You had a bucket of sandy mixture that you had in your shower forever. Like, why did you, first of all, I want to know, why did you ditch the soap?
Okay, so on the soap thing, I've had quite a few comments and questions that come in because I don't use soap, and I probably stink a little bit, but there's actually a lot of studies on soap that, and this is really a Dr. Hillary Lamper's question, probably. Probably better for Ryan's wife than for me. Maybe we'll get her on and talk about it, but there's a lot of problems with soap. When my wife was sick with cancer, I just learned a little bit more about maybe some of the things that could cause cancer and that could cause problems in your health. I'm pretty focused on my food. I try to eat lean meats and good animal fats and vegetables and fruits, whole foods. And that's good. I try to get lots of sleep. And I try to limit things like I don't smoke or drink or any of that. Anything that could be bad for me. But there's something that I think a lot of health conscious individuals overlook, and that is the soap and the deodorants and the toothpaste and toiletries in general. Like, there's a lot of chemicals and additives and things in those that are bad for you.
Do you treat your soaps the way you treat food, as in, like, when you look at the ingredients, if you can't pronounce the name, you tend to not go near it?
I definitely changed my approach a few years ago, and I was actually listening to a Barbell Shrug podcast, and the guys had quit using soap. And I did some research, and it sounded like when you quit using soap, at first you can get a little oily and stuff because your body's so used to being stripped of its oils that it's compensating, and then your skin's drying, you have hand rashes. And I had a lot of rashes on my hands and stuff over the years that just started to develop that I never had. And anytime I use soap, like a normal soap, bar soap, my hand would break out in these rashes. I started to realize how the soap was causing allergic reactions for me, or negative reactions. I quit using soap and never looked back, because as soon as I stopped using soap, my skin felt better. I felt totally normal. You sweat a little bit, you get a little bit of odor. I'd never really had a strong stink to begin with. Some people have really bad body odor.
Yep.
I think I eat a lot of green veggies and stuff, and so I don't know, I eat pretty clean, so I don't, maybe that's something, maybe it's not, but I don't have really bad BO as long as I kind of rinse off every day. So typically what I do is I hop in the shower most days after a workout or whatever. I just get in the shower and rinse off. I don't use any soap.
Yep.
When I first started not using soap, I went to Primal Pit Paste, which is like a natural deodorant, and they had in there like a sugar scrub that was just coconut and sugar.
That's a Mark Sisson thing, right?
From the Primal Blueprint,
yeah.
Mark Sisson. Yeah, I can't remember where I was pointed to it, but there's a lot of options out there. But it has no harsh chemicals. It's aluminum free, fragrance free. It doesn't have anything extra in it. And what I found is coconut oil with mixed with sugar, and there's different recipes you can get online. That works great. And my skin's really clean. The oil has a way of cleaning. And the deal is your skin has a lot of bacteria on it, and it's supposed to. And there's good bacteria. But we're using these antibacteria, which strip your skin of this stuff. And so this soap kills the bacteria on your skin, which actually helps with keeping odor out, keeping your skin protected, your body protected. So you're removing that barrier. Soap strips your skin of its natural oils and fats and lipids, and there's a whole ton of research on that. And then soap contains other toxic chemicals. A classic bar of soap is usually made of a combination of lye and some type of fat and or oil. That's typically how it's made, which is pretty harsh. The pH on that, the acidity levels on that are pretty harsh, why you kill the bacteria on your skin. But it says nowadays, additional ingredients include dangerous chemicals. For example, sodium lauryl sulfate, SLS. It's known as a mutagen that can alter cellular materials. Other chemicals like benzyl acetate are carcinogens, causing cancer. while benzaldehyde and the like can depress the nervous system, these kinds of toxins are terrible for your body and only add to the above mentioned dangers of classically formulated soap. So your normal soaps, already are harsh enough, but now you're talking about all the chemicals added to them. So anyway, I just quit, man, and I don't need it. I on some occasions when I know I'm going to be in a public arena with a lot of people and I know I'm probably going to be nervous and whatnot, I'll bring out an old-fashioned deodorant stick that just crushes,
yeah,
that
you need a little more suppression than
antiperspirant, just stops sweat altogether.
Yep.
That's like, I don't know, once every 3 months or something. I might use it once every 4. Otherwise, I really try to go all natural, and I get a little stinky, and I get in the shower and rinse off, and I'm good. And that's once a day, or I probably get in the shower every 3 or 4 days if I'm not hitting the gym. If I'm hitting the gym every day, I always just rinse off.
I always rinse off after I work out.
My skin is soft, feels good. Wife likes it.
Yeah.
No
complaints.
No complaints.
No complaints on the home front.
Anyway, there was another question.
The other question we had was from Brian K., and the subject is back pain. Hello, Mr. Gritty. I would first like to say you're doing a great job with the podcast, and I truly enjoy it. While catching up on your podcast, I heard you mention there was a time in your life where you had back pain and had either a bulging or herniated disc. I was hoping you could provide some insight on how you got your back healthy and strong. Being that you can squat 400 plus and clean and jerk 315, this guy knows a lot about you. Both which are very impressive. From the podcast, I know that you do CrossFit-like workouts and you like the Supple Leopard. Is there anything else that you did that you feel really helped with improving your back health? I'm not overweight, being 5'11" and 180 pounds. I also stick to a paleo-ish diet. However, having serious back problems at my age of 31 is very frustrating. I hope and pray that I can continue to hunt into my other years as your guest, Greg Munther, has. Any information or resources that you can provide are much appreciated. Thanks again for all that you do, and stay gritty.
My heart goes out to people with back pain.
It's the worst. It's
debilitating and frustrating, and there's so many things going on back there that can be the cause of your problems. For me, I can just speak to what worked for me. I herniated a disc in my lower back. I don't remember which one. It was debilitating. My back would lock up. I'd have to stay in bed and lay down. I couldn't, and this is mid-30s, 34 or something, 33. I was wrecked, and I went to physical therapy and for 6 months or so. At the time I thought my life was over. I was super depressed. I didn't think I could do physical things anymore. I thought it was like some kind of permanent damage. And when I talked to the physical therapist and was going there, they're like, no, this gal was working with me. She's like, dude, you're going to be fine. Life is not over. But I couldn't see past it because it was just so debilitating. I mean, if I want to pick up my kid off the ground, it could throw out my back, I think what got me in that position, to that place, was sitting at desks all day long, every day, sitting and sitting and sitting. I honestly feel like for me, the sitting is what damaged it. College, just driving, post-college, sitting at a desk, working in a white-collar office, all those things. It's the sitting and the stationary all day long, every day. And then lack of sleep, muscles just going to atrophy, Getting away from sitting was number one. I just quit sitting. At the office, I got a standing desk. I rode the bus to work so I could stand. It was like an hour, so I wouldn't have to sit down. When I was in office meetings, I just refused to sit. I just said, look, I have back problems. I'm standing. And I stood in all of our meetings. I just stood. I stood for everything. That was a big deal. Every time I sat down, it was like I just would roll back. My back would have problems.
How long did this go on for, this whole standing?
A year. I stood for a year, like literally avoided sitting down whenever I could. So the other thing was laying down on my stomach and doing, I forget what they call them now, but you kind of go into the cobra. Physical therapists do this a lot. I forget what they call it. It's a type of exercise to help with your low back. And you, for all the time you spend with your back bent forward, It causes the hernia to your discs in your back to bulge outward. And those discs, they get smashed in the front of your spine and they bulge in the back. And you've just spent a lot of years sitting or hunched over or being in the forward position. And when my back hurt, I would stretch and touch my toes. And that's what I felt like I needed to do because that would relieve some pain. But that was actually making it worse. What I really needed to be doing was bending backwards. And for all the hours you spend bending forward, you should be compensating by bending backwards an equal amount of hours. Well, none of us do that.
No.
It was a conscious effort of standing all the time. And then every 10 or 15 minutes or 30 minutes in the office, I would lay down on my stomach on a carpeted floor here. And I would do that cobra pose and arch my back. At first, I couldn't arch my back at all. Like literally, I could get my chest off the floor a little bit and it would pinch and hurt. A month or two later, I could go further and further until finally I could feel the bulge like pop.
Like it was just one moment where all of a sudden there was just a pop?
Yep. And I could feel my spine pop and like the pain was gone.
Whoa.
I don't know, a few months of that, it got to where every time I did that cobra thing, it would pop. And Put it back. Yeah.
That's intense.
Once I got to the point where, I just back bended a lot all the time. People will see me do it in the office all the time or downstairs in the CrossFit gym. Like I do that often. I mean, just every day, all the time, constantly. It's a big help for my back. And read a few CrossFit articles of people that were in the same boat. And I wish I could remember the name of that exercise right now. But
we'll make a post on Instagram here in a bit.
Yeah. Anyway, so you bend backwards. And that was a big deal. And then once I got to the point where I was somewhat functional and it didn't lock up all the time, I started doing calisthenics. I started to do like plank positions, push-ups, sit-ups. And with sit-ups, I did them assisted. And then my back, the one thing to realize, my back would lock up from those exercises. It just flare up. So it was a delicate balance of always pushing the limits to get my back stronger without causing damage. And then slowly but surely, I'm a big believer in strengthening your body. So being able to do a proper squat, being able to do a proper deadlift, being able to do those two movements are, I think, integral to a long-term healthy back. Most people I know cannot squat properly. They can't. Their body can't do it. They don't have the mobility. Their hips don't open. They don't have ankle mobility. They can't do a basic function, which is squat, which is how all human beings actually take a dump in the woods.
It's the pooping position.
And
what? The saddest thing is most Americans have never had a good, real poop in their life because of the porcelain throne.
So the pooping position matters. And so if you can learn how to do a proper squat, and it sounds like this gentleman is into CrossFit and so on. And
or at least
so
he's aware of it.
On the right track. But it's important for me, and everybody's different, but for me, if I do deadlifts and squats and I add those to my repertoire, my package, then I lift weights not so I can be stronger.
So I don't hurt.
I lift weights so I don't get injured. When I'm going hunting and I'm climbing the mountain and I'm doing all this stuff, because Ryan's 45, I'm 44. So Ryan Lampers is no spring chicken either. And the two of us are pretty fit dudes, and we can hike, we can go. And when I exercise in the gym, or if I am into lifting weights, squats or deadlifts, one-legged squats, whatever it is, I do those things so that I don't get hurt. That's it. I'm basically risking injury whenever you lift 400-pound squat or something, but you're doing it in a controlled way, and you're putting your body under that stimulus in a controlled environment so that when you got a 150-pound pack on with an elk on it in awkward ways with the antlers all sticking out, and you slip on a hill and you got to catch yourself and get yourself back up off the ground, in that situation, because I squat 400 in the gym and do so well, that 150-pound pack, I'm able to keep right and not blow out a knee or an ankle or my low back. I think barbells and lifting heavy loads is critical for long-term physical strength. And it doesn't have to be. I mean, I hear a lot of people there's a lot of people I know that do really well with body weight, sit-ups, push-ups, whatever, all that stuff. I just get more stimulus myself. I feel better doing an external load with a heavy barbell. Anyway, just wanted to get to those questions. Check out this podcast with Ryan Lampers. Hope you love it. Give him a follow at Stealthy Hunter on Instagram, and check out their podcast. Ryan does a podcast with his wife Hillary called Hunt Harvest Health, and that's excellent as well. And look for more shows with Ryan Lampers. He's an animal. All right, stay gritty, folks. The Sonoran Desert today. Got my buddy Ryan Lampers, a.k.a. Stealthy Hunter. Stealthy Hunter. We're whispering a little bit because we are hunting Coues deer. Actually, we're not, technically. We've tagged out on Coues deer. How does that feel, Ryan?
It feels really good. Really good. The pressure is off, but we still have the mystical and magical that's eluded us this entire trip.
Yeah. The old Kawada Monday.
Yeah.
I'm like a god in Ryan's eyes. I shot one with a bow last year.
You made it look easy, so I assumed it would be easy and we'd just be seeing them bouncing all through the rocks. It's not the case.
I thought it'd be pretty easy too.
No. I mean, we've seen some. We've had some great stalks. We've been close. But, I don't know. We weren't holding our mouth right or something. Something just didn't. The hunt gods, the Kawadi gods were not good to us this week.
We've been schooled by the Kawadi, no question.
They showed themselves, but we just did not. We did not do our job.
Ryan hesitated in a moment of what should have been triumph, and blew the opportunity.
I was still in that phase of not really sure how these animals act. Like, should I tiptoe? Should I run in there? I'm going to go slow. Well, I did everything wrong on that first stalk. I should have just ran in there.
You got cocky a little bit. Tell me the truth. You were like, dude, that guy looks so easy to kill. Like, he'd dumber than a rock.
Well, I watched him, like, bebop through this entire basin. Now, he'd go fast at times, but then he kind of holed up on this, under this tree. And we got over there, and there he was, tail in the air.
He made no effort at stealth.
No.
At any time.
No.
On the mountain.
I mean, you just figure with that tail up in the air, you could be a mile away and you see him with your naked eye. But as soon as we got in close, he disappeared. And he got out of the entire country, the entire mountain that we were on, somehow, some way. And I'm still scratching my head trying to figure out how he did that. But I've developed a theory that they have some type of extra senses that we're not privy to.
I'm not so sure that they just didn't wander by and we were too slow to take advantage, because we had another one come within 10 yards, like a couple of idiots. Our guns were not with us. It's like the only time we've gone anywhere without a gun in our hand, because we've been waiting for that opportunistic moment on a Kawadi.
It was served up on a platter at 20 yards, and good grief.
It was a cluster, dude.
It was. And even after all that cluster, and we had him walk right down in front of us into a valley.
20 yards away.
With some brush. I figured it's a done deal. I mean, there's no way he can escape us in this little tiny cut. And he literally disappeared.
Which, that was the third one. The second one did the same thing. We thought we had him cornered in this little cut.
I'm pretty sure they dig a hole and bury and then fill the hole, because I looked for holes and I didn't even see a hole that he went into.
Dude, I don't know. They're gone. So we're glassing for javelina because I still have a tag. It's a little windy, so pardon the wind if it hits the microphone. It's just kind of, but I want to take advantage of Ryan while I got him here. But we want to kill two birds with one stone and keep hunting here. It's our last night. Hoping to get a javelina or a Kawada Monday.
And we're actually glassing the mountain that we've had some pretty dang good luck on. I killed my buck here. We've seen the coati, had some javelina, and there's another giant buck roaming this little knob that we've seen a few times. I watched him all morning.
Do you think he was bigger than the giant we saw this morning?
He was real similar. I think he beat him in the eye guard status. I don't know if he was as heavy. Or I don't know if the one that we saw today was as heavy.
Yeah, the one thing about this one we're glassing for tonight is just mass, pure mass.
Yeah, I got to watch him for a long time on day 2, and he's just real impressive. I saw him pretty dang close. I watched him where he was bedded and get up and really got a close. In fact, I saw him at, he was probably 50 yards when I saw him on this knob when you and David Brinker were, I don't know what you were doing, but you were not where you were supposed to be.
We were chasing Limpy, which is a valid target buck.
Yeah, and where all your stuff was 30 yards from where the giant Coues was when I walked up to you guys.
Yeah, that's not a depressing thought. And then right then, too, javelina walked right in front of us. So we're sitting in this spot with weapons nearby. So if something just walks by us, we can take advantage. But now that we have our gun, our bows, it's just probably not going to happen.
No.
Murphy's Law.
No, I think our luck ran out after you and I tagged out on Coues deer. I think that was
all we got.
A gift, and
that's what we got allotted.
After that, it's just been seeing a lot of bucks and no Coati Monday.
We tried so hard to help David Brinker get one. Finally, he got a stock yesterday. Shaved the brisket, cut the hair off.
Yeah,
he almost got it done. It's a great stock, but they're small targets and just barely missed. I mean, you're talking 3 inches higher. Dead deer. So
yeah, I've developed as little as I've hunted these things. Is the first time ever I've chased Coues deer, but boy, you can't walk away from this country and walk away from these deer and not have a pretty great respect for them and realize what everybody's talking about all these years on how hard they are and just how difficult. They're tiny. They're just twitchy. They're turned on. They're wary. They pick up everything, every noise.
Well, that's just it. We're real quiet because they'll hear us 500 yards, 1,000 yards. There was some military guys because we're near the border. They're all over the place, border patrol and the military, and there's helicopters. It's a little intense, but I feel safe.
I feel pretty safe. I mean,
but they're 1,000 yards away on this bluff, a couple mountains over, and we could hear them talking. Just talking in the regular voice, like plain as day.
This country, your voice carries very, very well. I don't know if people realize it, but they were a long ways away, and you could hear them like they were standing next to you. I thought they were way closer to us when I first heard voices.
Yeah, we've found a few places where there's no people. This morning, it's a Sunday. We saw quite a few people. It's a weekend. We saw quite a few people. But you gotta love the stillness here.
Yeah. We've been super fortunate as far as having this place to ourselves. We kind of hunkered down where we started because we were seeing some good bucks. And just have not had any crowds. And I mean, let's face it, if there had been a couple people in here, we could have easily found a draw or a canyon that had nobody. It's just a ton of land, public land to go chase them on. So, and there seems to be bucks almost everywhere. Like everywhere we've looked, we've seen maybe not giants, maybe not mature bucks, but deer. Pretty easy to find deer.
Well, the one from this morning was a giant, though, and he was rutting a doe, and we were driving to this spot where we thought we'd heard there was some javelina. It's where Randy Newberg killed his javelina. Little different terrain than where we've been. So we head over there, and right in the middle of the road is this buck rutting a doe in front of us, and it is huge. It looks like a Kansas whitetail.
Well, you first from I mean, we weren't that far away. And you said
80 yards maybe?
You saw the antlers and you said, is that a mule deer?
Well, I thought it was. At first, I thought for sure it was a mule deer.
Because it was much bigger body than...
The neck and the shoulders. It looked like a mule deer. And I saw his profile, him from the side, and I was like, mule deer. You know, because there are mule deer around here.
Yeah.
And his shoulders. And you're looking at him, you're like, no, that's a Coues, because he just turned and started walking away, and I saw his butt, and I'm like, that's no mule deer. And then we saw him like run around us, and tell the people what happened.
Well, obviously, initially we saw the rack, and the first thing I thought of was, that doesn't look like a Coues deer. That looks like a Kansas whitetail or something.
Like a straight up,
big old
legit
swooping rack,
like 100 and kind of 30-inch Kansas whitetail, 140. Like it looked like a normal whitetail, not a Coues deer.
It did. It had the same layout as a big old whitetail you'd see out in a cornfield or something. But no, we got pretty close, and he was just so focused on that doe. He had a hot doe chasing her. She'd sprint away. He'd follow her. And I went over to the side of the road there, and somehow he lost her. Like she threw a juke on him. She went one way. He thought she went up.
Yeah, he looked so confused.
And so he raced up the hill. Well, in the meanwhile, we kind of drove up a little bit, and he quickly realized she wasn't up there. So he wanted to get back to the doe. I think then he realized, oh, shoot, she must have been on the other side. And we were kind of blocking him from getting to his doe, and he did not like that. He made every attempt to try to get.
He came right at our truck, straight at it. He didn't make an effort to go around it. He was like, "Are you with my girl?"
I mean, at first he was like, 75 yards out there.
Yeah.
He raced up to 50, and the truck is still going.
When he came,
he raced up even way closer.
He came to 20
yards, and just
and you're like, stop, because he was going to cross 10 feet in front of us.
Yeah.
And then he's like, nah, and he ran back, but then he came back down a second, third time. And this time he just prances right up to the truck. Like, what are you going to do?
He came in like a rutting bull.
Yeah. Like he was going to fight us. Like he's going to fight us, and the truck is running.
Yeah.
And he just comes in like, you want to go? I can go. I mean, he was just amped. And then Ryan pulled out his phone and filmed it. And this buck, he's huge. He just like comes right up, and he's like, and he just pauses for a minute, like, and then somehow it's like his senses come to him. He's like, yeah, I can't beat this truck.
Yeah, what am I doing? It's a big truck.
He turned and ran back up a little bit, and it was awesome.
That was cool to see. I mean, and it wasn't like that place was like this tucked away little hidey hole either.
We found so many hunters right there.
We saw a lot of people. There were guys sitting on water holes.
It's one of the only places I've seen that many hunters.
Yeah. Yeah.
So maybe they know he's in there and he's getting targeted.
That's what we kind of figured. I think you see a buck like that. I know what I would do.
He can attract fanfare.
I would settle into that spot and really try to get him for sure. That is a monster. Something you're probably not going to see all the time down here.
4x4 with eye guards.
Yeah.
And heavy. Wide. Really wide. Wider than his ears.
Yeah.
And I think that's why he looked like a Kansas whitetail. Because he's wider than his ears. His rack didn't look small in proportion to his body. He looked every bit of like a 140 or 150 inch whitetail.
Yeah. And
in proportion to his body.
Yeah. That's what's crazy is, if you see him from a distance, I think, we've made comments this whole week about, they look farther away than they are. But that's just because they're tiny deer.
Mm-hmm.
So, proportionately, he looks like he's got this big old rack on him. But until you actually, put an arrow into one of these deer and see it up close, then that's when you realize these deer got tiny, tiny bodies.
So, I asked the audience, I asked people who follow Gritty on Instagram and social media to, I told him, because you killed a giant buck on day 2 of your hunt. You show up and, there's a guy who wrote in and his question, I might just read it here because it's well worded. He said, And this is exactly what I want to know. I'll just read what he said because it's true though. And you say, once Ryan has his boots on the ground in a new hunting area, how does he determine how he will start to go after the target animal in the new terrain he is hunting in? And then how does he put an effective plan in place, his thought process? Because this dude can go anywhere and put down a stud animal. It's impressive. And a lot of the time I hunt an area, I use the fundamentals like wind discipline and known or expected travel routes to my advantage, but getting mature animals down is hard. And he goes on a little bit more, but he's like, I see game, I do all this stuff, but what's the difference? Because he's not able to do what you can do. And I think a lot of people wonder that. In fact, I wonder that myself. You know, I spend a lot of time hunting. I've hunted with some great hunters, but I gotta admit, I can pretty definitively say, as far as spot and stock hunting goes, I think you're the best I've ever seen. And I haven't hunted with a ton of guys, right? But there's a different approach that you take, a different, I guess, demeanor that you have when you come out, unlike anything I've ever seen before. And I can talk about that later, but really I want to hear you talk. I don't really want to talk about it in terms of, right now, at least in terms of, you know, once you have boots on the ground, strategy, blah, blah, blah. I do want to get there at some point, but I actually want to hear about this hunt. Mm-hmm. You know, the thought process you went through on this specific hunt, how it all came together, all the parts and pieces that led you to the kill. I just want you to walk me through the hunt.
You want to hear like the story from first time I laid eyes on him, or how we kind of approached the mountain?
Yeah, both.
Okay. Well, again, I am not a expert Coues deer hunter. This is my first time ever. But I've done a fair bit of mule deer hunting. So, I think I can answer that when it comes to how I look at a mule deer area. For example, going to a new state or a new range or a new draw, a new unit or whatever. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I do a lot of hunts solo. I think there's a patience that you have when you're solo versus when you're with some folks, maybe a little bit more rushed, a little more pressure. I know when I'm approaching a mule deer unit, I really like to go in slow, for example, say like a place like Nevada. I do as much e-scouting as I can, but I can't say that helps as much as once you get eyeballs on the place and you get to see where people are parked, you get to see really the layout of the unit. So honestly, I drive around a lot on a unit, kind of look at it from all angles, see what kind of topography there is, and try to just determine, I guess, where the bucks are going to grow old. Where are they going to have a shot to grow older and mature? There's a lot of places I think where you're going to find bucks. You could find a big buck anywhere. You could find a big buck right off the road.
Like we did this morning.
But that is just not a focus. I think that the focus is always, where are those little points in the unit that are going to allow a buck to grow old? Whether it's, he's got to be able to escape a rifle season. Like in this place here, they got to get through, what is it? October, November, December?
In December, yeah.
They have to get through the rifle season to get to this point. What kind of terrain are we going to be looking at to find a spot that they can get away from people, not get seen much? Now, what that brings in is, you're also going to be hunting areas where not as easy to glass, maybe a little thicker country, a little more rugged, obviously tougher to get into, real similar to kind of where we are right now. There's places in here that you just can't see. There's folds. We're in kind of a mountain zone. There's a lot of rocks. There's brush. There's oak brush. There's definitely places where bucks probably just don't ever get seen, right?
Right.
Even here where obviously this is not a backcountry hunt. It's big mountains, but we're missing a lot of bucks. I feel like we're only seeing maybe, How many percent do you think we see? Maybe 20% of the deer in the area that we're looking at.
Yeah.
If we're lucky. Well, those type areas. So, like right here where we are, I found that buck at the bottom of or kind of a dark green steep chute. There's a lot of country behind it. I think that buck probably worked out from there.
When we pulled up the first morning and hit this valley,
yeah,
and started glassing, we just sort of picked a spot and drove out.
Yep.
And just wandered out until we found terrain we liked, parked, and started glassing. A lot of people are intimidated about going to a place they've never been before, and it's like,
sure.
It's often I find like if there's land and there's water and there's shelter and whatever, they're going to be there.
Yeah.
But we roll up and we start glassing. Were you purposely glassing that dark hole because you're like, that's where they're going to be? Or you just were glassing everything?
We picked up some smaller bucks, picked up a coati actually that first day. But thinking like a mule deer hunter, I was glassing the steeper, rockier country.
Yeah.
Where
something can grow old.
My eyes just kind of kept falling over there. And that's happenstance. I was looking in just a really nice ridge, a lot of timber in patches on the kind of the north slopes of these ridges, thicker cover and steep. And that just looks like a place that an old mule deer might hang out. He might come from if there was mule deer here. Unfortunately, haven't even seen a mule deer up here. It just looks like mule deer country, but it's definitely not. The whitetail have taken over up here for some reason. But automatically, I think with years of glassing mountains, hitting new country, looking for mature critters, I know for myself, my eyes just tend to go to the tough to get to type places, the rugged.
Yeah.
Not really looking at the yellow grass knobs or the flatter country, the lowland stuff. Just looking high, looking at the steep faces and glassing edges of timber and cover and places where, I've noticed this week these Coues bucks act very similar to an old KG mule deer. Even when they're rutting, they will stay statued for long periods of time. I mean, literally, I've watched bucks for 15, 20 minutes and they're just standing there and they're just not moving. And you can look in there. If you didn't know they were there amongst the timber, you wouldn't even see them, really.
Mm-hmm. That was fascinating to me to watch that old buck.
Yeah.
The does. His behavior, the does were out in the open. They'd strut around.
Yeah.
They'd run and all that. And that dude and a buck would come and it was like, man, crap, I gotta leave my cover.
Yeah,
and
very deliberate in all their actions.
Yeah.
They still have that little bit of wariness to them.
He's running, but he's
reluctantly.
He's like, damn it, I gotta go follow her now. And he runs from one tree to the next and he stops.
And they stop and they literally don't move. I mean, they're statued. They're not flicking their tail like the does are, the young bucks. They're not moving their heads around. They just literally stay motionless.
Yep. And you could see that doe and he'd just stand in the tree and it was like just watching him hide and be still. You realize he's on another level. Yeah. He's still going to stick with her. And then when he got deep into a canyon, he'd rudder.
Right.
He'd chase where he couldn't be seen on an open hillside.
Yeah.
But if she was up on the hillside, he's going to follow her, but he's going to hit each cover point.
Yeah, there's some things I've learned. A lot of things I've learned on this hunt, especially, but keeping your eyes on, if you find a good buck or a buck and you're thinking about going on a stalk, don't ever take your eyes off that buck because you will lose that buck in either tall grass, oak brush. They can move extremely fast and just end up somewhere completely different.
Especially with these tiny.
Oh, they're so short. I mean, they're so small that they can dip down in a fold that you can't see and they're gone forever.
And this has been unusually wet, so the grass is super tall. All the vegetation is super lush right now, and they can disappear in it.
Yeah. So gets a little, I've noticed after I've killed my buck, glassing up these other bucks. If you take your eyes off them and start wanting to wander and look for other critters on the mountain, you're going to lose the buck.
Mm-hmm.
Like you just got to stay locked on him the entire time. So it's funny because we saw some mule deer the other day, and I'm like, they're so much easier to keep an eye on. They're just so big. They jump out at you. They look like they're 4 times the size of these Coues bucks.
And so you're dealing with a deer that's a dainty, tiny little, it's the smallest deer out there. And what was real eye-opening to me is that one buck we were watching with Brinker. It ran up to that cactus, and it stood on its back legs and leaned over. And he's a big buck, big 3x3 eye guards. And he's eating the flowers off the top of the cactus, and he hops down. And he had to stretch. To get up there.
Yeah.
And then we and Brinker went up near the cactus, and I'm like, that thing comes up to my armpit.
It's a tiny little cactus.
In my mind, I thought it was like a mule deer or a big whitetail, on its hind legs stretching. And I realized it's up to my armpit. And you just realize, even though he's got a giant rack and he's for his body and he's a big deer, he's still a tiny deer, which makes them so challenging and fun.
Well, and the coloration of them as well. They really blend into
gray ghost,
like the oak, the short scrub oak patches and dirt. I mean, I don't know how many times I've panned across dirt, and then when you really start picking apart the mountain, you realize they were standing there the entire time.
Yeah, they
just
really
blend
are
in so well.
So you're glassing in this area where you think this deer is. You spot him.
Yeah, I spotted him from a long ways away. At that point, that's when I was panning over to what it looked like mule deer country. I could just tell there was a buck. He looked like a pretty decent buck chasing, there's like 4 or 5 does with him at the time. And he just kind of disappeared down into this draw, in this canyon, deep canyon. I think that was day 1.
Yep.
When I spotted him first. I decided I would take a walk, quite a long walk from where we were. Ended up getting a better angle into that draw. I actually got below him so I could kind of peer up into it and get the whole bottom, assuming at that point in the day that they were probably bedded up. So I knew it was going to be kind of a challenge to kind of relocate them, but I just wanted to, no expectations of a stock or anything like that. I just wanted to get in a location where I could kind of relocate, figure out that country where he was in, and just get better eyes on him at that point.
And could you tell he was a buck you wanted to go after?
He looked pretty good. I mean, he was a long ways away. I don't know, mile, whatever it was. I don't know. It was a ways, but he looked pretty good to me. But again, I'm no expert on Coues bucks. So he just looked like he was in a gnarly canyon, probably not getting looked at. And I wanted to get better eyes on him at that point. That's all I knew.
Yeah.
So fortunately, once I got down in there, it took me a long time to relocate him, pick him up. I actually picked him up under an old dead tree, a snag kind of in the bottom of that draw. A little bit of water in there, just like the most picturesque place to hunt a deer.
So when you went over there, and you were trying to find him, did you ever think you weren't going to find him?
Yeah, I figured it might take a good long while to repick him up. It might be evening before they start moving again. The sun had come out, I just kind of figured they're going to tuck in there for the day. And not knowing Coues deer, a mule deer will go in and it's at that point that probably be his second bed of the day. He's probably going to stay there. Mm-hmm. Not knowing that these Coues bucks, they don't stay down very long. They kind of get up
more like a normal whitetail.
Yeah, very frequently. They definitely don't hit a bed and stay there all day long. So fortunately, he did get up, and I was able to I relocated him before he stood up. And then I got real good eyes on him, and pretty frequently, I didn't have experience looking for an old buck, but I could tell he was heavy.
Yeah.
And I could tell he had long tines. I could tell he had really nice eye guards on him. And that excited me. At that point, I figured, you know what? This isn't a great spot. I like this spot comparable to the country I've seen. Looks like a stockable spot.
Yep.
I watched him. I actually, at that point, he was in a stockable spot down there in the bottom. Had some folds between me and him. And then I started picking up the does. The does started getting up. And so I knew I had my work cut out for me with all those doe eyes. But I did end up getting down to within 125 or 105 yards. And then they kind of moved off to 125. And instead of taking the route, if they would have gone down canyon, stayed in the bottom, there was a good chance that I was going to get a shot. So I kind of just, posted up at that point thinking I can't really get any closer where they are. I'll just hang out. Hopefully they come my direction.
And why not push in?
I didn't want to blow it so soon. I did recognize that's like from the photos that I've seen and the posts that I've seen on Coues deer, I realized that's a pretty dang nice buck.
But couldn't you have just killed him that night?
Not something that you probably want to go in reckless and blow it. Really wanted to take my time. Similar to a mule deer approach when you find a good one.
I don't know what you're talking about, Ryan. I just go in and I kill it.
Take all the time it takes and just make sure you don't make any mistakes.
So
the old adage, those bucks don't get that way from being stupid.
So let's talk about that, because I think a lot of us guys, including me included, I'm looking at that. The wind is good. Mm-hmm. There's some cover noise. He's right there. I could get in. I could get in real close. I could probably kill him that night.
Yeah.
I mean, I just nothing ventured, nothing gained.
Well,
what goes through your mind? Why
mind,
not go for it that night?
It just never works out like that quickly. I don't know why. It tends to, I wanted to observe them, see kind of what their mannerisms are, how they acted, where they were going. Just see what they were going to do. And yeah, it would have been great if he would have, came my direction and given me a shot. I probably would have had about a 35-yard shot if he came down draw. And I was kind of banking on that. That was the only play that was like, that's 100%. That's a gimme if he comes down this direction.
Okay.
If I sneak in, my percentage would go way down and I'd possibly bump that buck out. And again, not knowing Coues deer, I don't want to take that risk. I don't know if they leave country.
Again, right.
Yeah.
So you're like not a high enough percentage.
Not a high enough percentage
of killing him if you push closer. Are you not worried that buck is not going to be there tomorrow and gone somewhere else 2 miles away?
There's always that chance, right? But I don't know. It seems like they were rutting. There was obviously a hot doe. There was 4 or 5 other does. It felt like he was probably going to stick to this little zone here. And again, without the people, kind of an untouched area. If it would have worked out that night, great. But I was prepared to take as many days as it would take to find a very, very high percentage stock.
See, I think that right there is a very different approach than a lot of hunters take. Mm-hmm. What I noticed right off the bat was your patience, extreme patience, and your willingness to take many days of watching the buck and seeing what he does until the conditions present themselves that give you that opportunity.
Right.
And that means you'd be covering a square mile or about a square mile of terrain, I would say, from here to here to here, roughly. I mean, going back over the mountain, maybe not as a crow flies, but certainly as topography goes. Mm-hmm. And you'd be gambling whether you could pick them up again.
Sure.
And these bucks, they hide.
They do.
They're experts.
The only thing that you got going for you is the rut going on right now. They move around a little bit.
Okay.
And that morning where I'd seen them come from, my thinking was it was a deep, dark enough draw with the timber they're probably going to stick to this little spot. They're feeling pretty safe. They can definitely go unseen in there. But, I mean, knowing that we had time, we had days to burn.
Day one.
That was day one. No need to go in reckless and blow it up. And especially, seeing that it was a good buck, just going into mule deer mode. We've talked about this before. There's something about deer, like mature deer. People have said it, it's maybe cliche, but patience kills the mature buck. Patience kills the buck. And that's true. And definitely I'm not as probably patient and slow on elk as mule deer, and now Coues deer. Figuring out it works on Coues deer as well. But, no, I approach these deer like very, very sloth-like. I'm slow.
Well, I
just want to take my time and, stick with the high percentage.
Well, as we were coming into the unit, before we even started the hunt, maybe a day or two earlier, whatever, we were talking, and you said, I told you about a giant buck I had seen in this one spot, and you're like, well, let's go back over there and just, if he hadn't been hunted or shot, let's go there and find that buck. He's a giant.
Yeah.
And I was like, thinking to myself, when he said that, I was like, well, we went back there a couple times, never saw him. But it was like, we didn't really comb that place. Mm-hmm. We didn't actually look for that guy and try to see his behavior and his patterns and what he did. We just went there a couple mornings and evenings to see if we could turn him up again. And
sure.
But your approach is like, you knew this buck was here. He became a target for you. And then you were going to glass this entire mountain and figure out what he does.
Yeah.
Every day.
Yeah, that's kind of what you have to do, right? You got to take the time to learn their behavior, learn where they're going on the mountain, when they're going there, where they're bedding, where the does are, to kind of figure it out and learn where you want to set up for an ambush, where they're going to bed up, where you may have a shot. They're not always going to bed in even stockable positions. Because eventually they will.
Because I'm kind of used to, like, if I'm hunting in Alberta or we watch a deer, we see it bed, we see 2 or 3 maybe. We pick the one we're going to go after. We blow that one. We go after the next one. We blow that one. We go after the next one. Right? And then we go do it again the next day.
Right.
What you're suggesting is a totally different deal where it's like you watch the same buck day after day after day and not making a move at all.
Right.
And then all of a sudden you're like, okay, these conditions, this place, this spot, where he's going, this could work, right?
Mm-hmm.
And of course, you told me different stages of the rut and different periods, they'll change all that. Still, it's kind of a different approach than many, I think, take.
Yeah, it's not an exciting approach.
I don't know.
I'll tell you that. It's
you're
not
a student
like
of behavior, though.
Day.
Like, I think it is kind of exciting.
Well, what I really enjoy, and we've talked about this week, is this is a completely new animal for me. This is a new terrain. I'm not even a whitetail guy. I don't know how to hunt whitetails, but I love hunting bears. I love hunting deer. I love hunting elk. You kind of just treat them all the same, and that's just really pay attention. So, I came here with every intention on learning as much as I could about these Coues deer, and I learned a ton this week by just sitting back and watching their behavior. Fortunately for me, this big buck ended up, while I was watching him, put himself in what I thought was him, put himself in a spot where I thought I had a shot. And I went for it. But
so let's move on to that part of the story.
Mm-hmm.
You come back the second day, to the same spot,
so
try to find where you left him the night before.
Right, that night before, I ended up watching him. I was pretty excited after I got to watch him work his way up the opposite hill, chasing a doe. Went up into that green timber, and I ended up seeing him pretty high on the hill, and then got out of there. Next day, number one focus is to get back to that spot and try to relocate, pick him up. So that second day, I went down there basically to just glass the mountain, really kind of see if he was using that same draw, that same area, and do the same thing that he had done the day before. Well, he didn't. He had worked his way probably 500 yards up draw.
Mm-hmm.
Totally different spot.
Took you most of the morning to find him, right?
It took me a while to pick him back up. There's so many little folds and wrinkles and oak brush, and these things are just at home in that oak brush. They bed in there. They rut around in there. They just disappear.
And is your theory, like, basically at this point, doing what you've done so far, that if there's a buck on a mountain in general, you can find him again? Do you think you have that kind of confidence?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, with good glass and patience and time on your side, which we had all of that. Yeah, absolutely. You know, you may go a day and not even see him or pick him back up, but you have to have that confidence to go back in there and find him. Now, I may have picked a different vantage point or gone to the opposite side and looked back on our draw or whatever it was going to take to kind of cover all angles.
Which you did.
Which I did.
And did for Brinker.
Yep. Finally relocated that bugger, and he, you know, it was still semi-morning, I guess, and I got to watch him just rut does. In fact, there was another buck that he went and kind of pushed around, gimpy, a buck that, I don't know how, but he had broke his leg.
See a little buck?
Yeah.
He's walking behind the draw over there.
Oh, you see one now?
Yeah. Okay.
And so I watched him for hours. I watched him breed a doe. Actually, it's funny, like that other little buck showed up. And the doe, actually, I saw the doe run up to the bigger buck. And he bred her, like right then. Right when it was, I don't know, she wanted no part of that other little buck moving into their little space. And then, she buggered out. There were still a bunch more does. They just kind of worked over and slipped into this little crease with a lot of oak brush. And I think they were going to just hang out there for the day. Well, it was a spot that I could kind of recognize as, well, that's stockable. I mean, I could get close. It's this spot right over here that we're looking at. It's a pretty good crease. There's a nice fold to the left of it, so that I could, come down on. So what I did is I relocated. I came back, went to the truck, went back up draw about 1.5 miles. Mm-hmm. And my best approach was going to be not from the top, other side, but from the top of the canyon. So I ended up just following this creek and following the folds all the way to where I got somewhat close. Now I had marked that spot where he had bedded on my Onyx. I put a little waypoint over there just to look at it. Yep. So I wouldn't lose it.
You're using your satellite image and you can figure out, especially in this desert terrain, exactly kind of where that's at.
Oh yeah, you can lose deer pretty fast if you don't
mark it
on your Onyx. So
that's cheating.
Call it what you will. It works. It
Technology
works well.
Whore.
Keep going. Yeah. So I posted up in a spot. I had picked out a place where I could get a good vantage. Quite a ways away from that draw, and I would be able to see pretty much everything in there. And so I got up in there, and I recognized there's a bunch of deer rutting around. There was another buck, a real white-horned buck bedded right in front of me.
You were just surrounded.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was a little rodeo in this little swale.
And the wind, were you confident in the wind?
So the reason, thanks for bringing that up. Actually, the reason I went for it at that time...
Because you're only day 2, brother. What happened to Mr. Patience?
Well, at that time, the wind was ripping. So we had this directional that was going south to north. And it was just noisy. It was pretty stiff.
Consequently, I killed my buck within an hour of you killing your buck. Yeah. And I think there's no coincidence there.
No, there was definitely that. You get an advantage of wind in this country where it's so noisy and so dry.
So take advantage of it. It's like that's your magic moment, man. If you can take advantage of it, then
for sure.
So you moved in. You recognized that.
So yeah, I got a good advantage. I figured out where they were.
And you were pretty sure they were not going to wind you because of your approach.
Yeah,
the wind was holding solid.
100% sure there was no way they were going to win me. That wind was just right in my face the entire time and really, really noisy. So what I did is I got down in there, had to drop back off my perch, drop a little lower in the canyon to go unseen, work my way up to a point where the whole group of deer, they were just, like I said, there was like 4 bucks in there and a handful of does. So I had bucks below me. I had bucks, on the top end of the little draw.
And what was your plan exactly?
So at this point, when I got to there, I knew I didn't have a great stock. They're up, they're moving around. There's no way to just kind of walk in on them. So I watched them for a long time in that spot.
And what's your goal here? Ideally, what are you trying to do on these stocks, on every approach when you do it? Ideally, because you said earlier you had this percentage kind of idea in your mind.
So my idea was just do whatever it takes to not blow them out, not spook them. Now, these deer know nobody is hunting them.
But in a way that's conservative so that at all costs, you don't bump them.
Don't bump them. So
that's a delicate knife edge balance.
Coming at them from the upwind side. And kind of my strategy on this whole thing is I knew just by seeing the country that it's going to be pretty tough to stock in on a bedded Coues buck and get in tight. Well, the wind was ripping, so like I said, that helped. But my biggest strategy was going to be to get in tight, get in as close as I felt like I wasn't going to get detected. And while they're running around, hope and pray that one would come by me. So let them make the move towards you. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what I was looking at, at doing in this spot. During that time, I was in a pretty good spot. I had a doe race right by me. I was hoping the buck would as well. I had a little smaller buck come within 60. And then I had a little crease where there was a point where the deer were kind of in the oak brush, no eyes on me. So, slipped on the stocking shoes and the socks and everything like that and snuck down in this little crease. And the way the deer were working, they were kind of working up that draw. And I knew if I could get down into the bottom of that crease, and if they moved up that thing from the bottom, they'd probably come right past me. And that would be my best shot.
And I imagine that this is because they're not going to smell you.
Not going to wind you. Not from that side.
Not from that side. The only way they're going to wind you is to walk past you and you're going to kill one if that happens.
Everything behind me is pretty much yellow grass.
Okay.
I don't think they're going to go up in there. And the brush was in front of me.
And you're not pushing in so far that you're going to blow them out. Spook them. They're not going to bust you.
No chance. No. So at that point, I saw that crease and I snaked my way into that top of that crease. And it was at that point I figured, you know what? This is going to be actually a pretty dang high percentage stock if I can get to the bottom of this little rocky crag. Because there was kind of like a wall of rocks on the bottom of this crease. And it kind of would block.
Okay.
Block them from seeing me. And it would give me a good visual as to when they were coming up the crack where I'd actually have a shot.
How far are they right now?
They're about 80 yards out.
Okay, so they're 80 yards out. Why don't you just shoot them at 80?
But they're like rodeoing it all over the place. So they're like 60, 80, 120, and just
running.
Those does, they're like little mini sprinters.
Ballerinas.
I mean, you just watch them.
Like acrobats.
Their heads down, and they're just flying. Mm-hmm. And then they just stop. And the buck catches up, nose to the ground, eventually.
And so you're kind of perching yourself in a spot where you're like hoping they're going to rut that way eventually.
Right.
And it's conservative, so you're not going to get busted.
Yeah.
Now, what if they came within 50 yards running like that, and then they just decided to go the other way, and they went like a half a mile away?
Very likely could have happened.
And you were prepared for that?
Oh, yeah. And then I just back out. And
you're okay with that? You're like, I'll just come back tomorrow.
Go at them the next day. Yeah. Yep, for sure.
That takes a whole different level of thinking, because I think a lot of people are like, I am only 50 yards away. Like, yeah. I just need 20 more yards or 30 yards or,
I'm not the world's greatest shot. 50 yards on a Coues deer. They're tiny targets, man. And the wind was blowing.
That's why I said,
that's
risky. You only need 30 more yards of distance to cover.
Yeah.
Only 20 yards. Yep. Like, if you could just close to 30 yards or 25, you know what I mean? Like, but what you're saying is that's out of the question, really. That's not. Yeah. They either come to you and give you that high percentage opportunity, or they walk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I wasn't going to be reckless at all, even with having them that close. It's kind of crunch time, right? That's where you don't want to make the mistake. So you kind of have to be prepared if they decide to kind of work their way down or back where they came from.
Walk out of your life forever.
Come back, find a different approach on a different day. Don't be too bummed out. It didn't work that time, but just keep at it. So I did say a few prayers while I was in that gully, hoping that they would work their way up there, because it really turned out to be a great spot. How it blocked them from seeing me up against that rock wall. Mm-hmm. And, I could just kind of, very slowly work my head up and see some does. And, I knew the bucks were all fairly close to the does. So, I got to watch that. I got to watch that bigger buck. Now, one thing I didn't say was that big buck that I'd watched.
Yep.
He turned into a different big buck.
What a difficult problem to have.
I have no idea where the big buck that I'd watched all morning went, but now the big buck that I'm looking at, he's got a different type of rack to him. He kind of curves in. His eye guards are different.
Very different.
Long, good tines on him. Had a fourth point. Like, all of a sudden, wow, that's the big buck in the valley, but he's different. So somehow, some way, that other buck probably caught a hot doe and took off out of there. Or this different buck came in and pushed him out. I don't know.
Yep.
But I was, at that point, it's like, wow, that's a smoking great buck. I will take that all day long.
It's one of the biggest bucks I've seen this week. Mm. I mean, it's Boone and Crockett. I'd be shocked if he's. What was the guess by some of the resident experts? Was 104 at a minimum?
Yeah. I think 105-ish is what they were saying. 104, 105. 104,
105, and maybe
idea, and probably never will know his exact score, but
maybe bigger. But just a gorgeous deer. So when do you figure out it's not the deer you were originally going after?
When I'm within about 80 yards.
Okay.
Because I never looked at him that close. I just saw he's a big buck, and that's the same buck. He's right in the same spot. And then it was like, man, something's different about this one. He's heavy, but his front's curve in a little bit, more like a blacktail basket on the front. Mm-hmm. And he had a fourth tine on that side. So he was a 4x3 or 5x4 if you count guards. I guess you count guards with.
It depends.
Whitetail.
With whitetail, it's just a 10-pointer or an 8-pointer.
So,
and I don't think you say pointer. You say point. 8-point.
He's a 9-point.
9-point.
So he was a 9-point.
Maybe. I can't. I just can't. He's a 4x4 with eye guards.
We should have asked the hunting public.
Yeah, we should have.
They probably would have told us the correct way to talk about him. But yeah, so I noticed that, and that was like big deal. Okay, well, I'll take this one if I get a shot. And watched them. I was in that for a while they rutted around. Did their thing, which was really cool to be that close to them and watch the does race around, and then, see the bucks do their thing. And obviously the bigger buck was just kind of pushing those other bucks around, and they kind of kept their distance. But, in the end, I was posted up on that spot. I had a little draw that intersected the little cut I was in. And to my best guess, that was the draw that they were going to work up. Mm-hmm. And it was only 26 yards to the other side of this draw. So if they were going to be in the middle, it was going to be a top pin type shot. What is that working into the water hole right there? It's a coyote.
Where?
He's right at the water. Left side.
How far is that, Ryan?
He's probably... He's shootable.
Get your rifle. I hope I hadn't pushed record on that whole thing. So 26 yards. You pushed in. You're on the.
Yeah. So I am in that cut. I've got kind of a rock wall to that cut on my right side. 26 yards across the little cut that intersects the one that I'm in. Kind of goes at a 90 into it. It's just like perfect little gift of a spot for trying to ambush that buck. Mm-hmm. I think at that point, I knew it could happen at any time, and I was watching them a lot. I just kind of poked my eyes up. They're still far enough away. They're 80 yards away, but they'd go every which way, and I knew it could happen fast. So I'd kind of laid out everything, in my mind that I needed to get, prepared for the shot. Obviously release, but arrow knocked, ready to go, and running through that whole process of how is this gonna go? How am I gonna make the shot? Remembering your how you're pulling through, how you're holding the bow, relaxing, deep breath, that whole thing. And so, knowing that it was going to be a close shot, I also knew that these deer can spin in a hurry. Mm-hmm. So, I knew I'd have to stop him, and I figured it'd just be a fast go if he did come my direction. So I kind of, thought everything through. Lo and behold, after watching him, I kind of recognized that there was a doe, one of the does that the big buck was after, had gotten out in front of him, and was kind of working up my direction. Yeah. So, I thought that, this may go well, may actually happen. And I was fully prepared that it wouldn't, and, you just back out. No, that doe was beelining it for
let's talk about that
right
for a
to
minute,
left.
Because here you are, like, working your way in, and you've talked about being super conservative and not bumping anything that's, in there. Like, you're trying to get as close as you can, mm-hmm. but not ever blow it, and then get a really high percentage shot.
Right.
So what happens if those deer hang up at 50 yards or 60 yards and never come any closer, and then run a half a mile away?
Oh, they're just going to live to see another day. You pretty much just got to wait.
You're okay with that. You're prepared for that. You're okay with, even though victory's so close, you can taste it.
You can taste it.
And that if you just snuck in another 20, 30 yards, you have a shot. And they're distracted.
That's when things get blown up and it all goes south, right, Brian?
Well, I can speak to that. Yeah. I'm an expert at blowing it compared to you.
That's when everything has to work just perfectly. Got to pay attention to every little tick on your bow, and all your movements have to be deliberate and very, very cautious. So,
you're not a fan.
Stalking mule deer for years. There's times you get within a certain range and you just realize, this is going to be pretty low percentage, or the wind's starting to get to where it might start dumping back down on the hill. Come back and try to do it a different day.
And this isn't foreign to me as it relates to, like, Colombian blacktail back in Oregon. Like,
right.
On small acreage, especially family-owned property, a big buck will roam through there and get on a doe on our property. Maybe not live there, but he shows up each year during the rut. I've got like a week, really, maybe 10 days, to take advantage of this opportunity where a mature buck comes in and picks up a doe or two that kind of live on our little acreage. And if I push in, if I leave my scent, if I do things that pressure that buck, he will leave my property. He'll just go somewhere else.
Yeah.
And then he'll come back in a week or two, but my season's over. He's starting to come back at night now. And so I approach that tree stand setup in a way where it's like, okay, I'm not going to invade his space. I'm not going to leave a ton of scent. I'm going to be as unobtrusive as possible. I'm going to hunt sort of the edge. I'm going to push in a little bit on his bedding area, but I'm not going to get too close. And I am going to just wait for him to give me a chance. Because as long as I don't blow him, there's always a chance that I'm going to get a really good high percentage shot.
Yeah.
And you're basically telling me you're doing the same thing, but in a spot and stock scenario, which I've never really... I don't know. I've kind of looked at it like it's now or never, and you find a different one tomorrow.
Yeah, I think with elk I probably would, because there's a lot more elk generally. Mm-hmm. Kind of have to be aggressive, and you can just go find one in a different drainage. But man, mature bucks, they're kind of special. Any little thing, you may not see another mature buck for a week. It feels like every time you find one, it's it's rare. It's extremely rare when you find an old mature buck. And especially not knowing these Coues, I recognized that I had found one. I was overly cautious, which I think, you kind of have to do in all hunts, especially mule deer. But if it doesn't work out, just be prepared to keep putting in the days and come back another day or a couple days later.
Yeah, and you said to me on the first day, you're like, well, Brian, I found the buck I'm going to kill. So I'm just going to slow play him all week.
Yeah.
Pretty much just going to get in close and just going to stay conservative. I'm not going to blow him out. He's going to stay right here in this pocket, and he's going to give me an opportunity.
Eventually, he's going to come my direction. And that's, low percentage, I would say, as far as them actually coming your way. You got to have a little bit of luck on your side with that. But if you put yourself in that position enough times, it's probably going to happen if you have the days to burn.
Mm-hmm.
Very luckily for me, it worked out fairly quick on this one. But I was fully prepared to go in there,
go the distance,
have them maybe just stay out of range, work the other way, have a doe lead them the other direction. That's fine. Just back out. Try to relocate them later that evening or the next morning. Spend the day relocating them. Next time, maybe it'll be even a little higher percentage spot that they put themselves in, and get where you think they're going to go. Play the wind, and again, hope and pray that they move your direction. And the big benefit of them rutting around and having other bucks and does kind of just sprinting all over the place, it really is like a rodeo watching these little deer. It's not the case with mule deer so much. These guys actually like sprint around. The does they'll take 50 yards and they'll just, head down, booking it.
You haven't hunted whitetail?
No, I haven't. No, it's totally foreign to me.
Whitetail will they'll run over this mountain and down the other side and back over the mountain.
Right back at you. Yeah. I saw that as an opportunity. It's like, well, it could happen quick. Get yourself in tight and let them come to you. Basically the whole strategy of the week. That's the only thing that in my mind was going to make sense to have a high percentage shot.
So this buck starts coming. Like, tell me about how this unfolded the rest of the story.
Yeah. So, fortunately, the doe, and there was a couple other bucks down below me to the right, smaller bucks, and then the doe, she just decided to take that little cut straight right to left of me, heading up from me, and I was perched there at the bottom of that little kind of rock cut that intersected that draw.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect spot. Like I said, 26 yards across canyon, 18-yard, 20-yard shot if he comes right at the gut of it. And so I let the doe, she did one of those weird, crazy rodeo things where she just got a wild hair and she just like sprinted right past me, like right up the draw. And, that gets your heart racing because now you're thinking, is the buck going to be going this fast? There's no way I could stop a buck when he's booking it that fast.
And but now too, that buck is going to follow her.
That buck is coming because I've watched him all day. This is 3:30 that day. I've been watching him since morning, and inevitably I'd see a doe do that, and then the buck would nose to the ground and just like bird dog her and catch up to her eventually. Sometimes you just race in on her. Sometimes you just get on her scent and follow her right up and get after it. But yeah, so obviously when that doe went sprinting past, it heightened everything. And so running through my shot process in my mind, she took off past. I ended up, I think I laid it out. I had rock wall to my right. I had about a 2-foot gap, and then I had a little tree. And then beyond that, it was wide open, just up the cut. Had about, probably 10 yards of open.
But you purposely put yourself in a spot where you could draw your bow without being seen.
Right. Yeah.
So you could already be at full draw when the buck, if he came down that pathway, you'd already be sitting there.
Yeah. Yeah. So I just made a guesstimate that he was coming right behind her. And so I drew at that point. After she blew past me, I kind of settled down, deep breath and pulled back. And that buck didn't take too long, but he was coming pretty fast. but I had already planned out how I'm going to do this. Hearing about how sketchy, twitchy, fast, these things will spin, they'll matrix on you, whatever, I knew I had to stop him. But I also knew that at that point that you stop him, you better get that shot off really fast.
Right.
So my plan was, and pull through the shot at almost the exact same time. And that buck came right to left. He went right up the gut, nose down. He kind of picked his head up and got past that little tree. And wide open 18 yards, I did just that. I stopped him, and basically at the fraction of a second he stopped, my arrow's in the air, and everything felt perfect. Everything felt like it was a great shot. And so, at that point I sat down, started talking to my phone, which I do, and kind of just replayed what happened. My adrenaline's pumping at that point. I was super excited. I couldn't believe I got a shot. Second day,
Yeah.
So I sat down, talked into my phone, told the story, and then, gave it some time.
Which I haven't seen that phone video yet.
No, nobody's going to see that unless Hillary steals my phone, which she's done several times. And
I think
she
just
roots
going to
around in there and just finds little embarrassing pieces, and she airs them out for everybody.
I'm going to talk to Hillary when we get back and ask her to mine that data out of your phone for me.
Yeah, I documented almost every day in here, which is not typical, but that whole stock was just, I had plenty of time all day. So I was constantly like, this is what's happening. I got the bucks out here at this point. I got blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Pretty fun. But so at that point, my adrenaline was going like crazy. Probably talking like a little school kid on my phone, and wanted to give it a little time.
Dude, you shot a Coues deer. I mean, not just a little, not
That's
just
what
a
I was
Coues deer,
saying.
like a giant,
I just shot a big old
like a
Coues deer buck.
If he's not Boone and Crockett, he's right there. I mean, he's an incredible buck.
Yeah. Yep. Couldn't be happier. It just looks so impressive when they're coming by you and that close, and just seeing that cool basket rack on him and heavy horns and everything. It was just unreal. So I gave it some time, and then kind of walked out. I could see my arrow, my complete pass through on that buck. And so I could see my arrow across the canyon, but I don't know. I didn't even want to walk over to it.
Yeah.
Because I knew to my right, that buck was going to be down there, hopefully, and still not knowing. I mean, I knew the shot was good. I just didn't know, how far he was going to go.
Right.
So no sooner, I just rounded the edge of that rock face where I'd just shot from, and I went over, grabbed my arrow. There's immediate blood, and I just looked down about 30 yards, and there was that buck just laying in the yellow grass. He didn't go far at all. And it was just unbelievable feeling at that point, like what just unfolded. So I was pretty giddy.
Yeah, and I think some of the things that stand out for me, watching you hunt and hearing about your hunt, being here all week, is that you have a high degree of patience. You're willing to find an animal and then watch him day after day after day, comb an entire mountainside to find him, relocate him again. If he's in this drainage or on this mountain, he's probably going to be there again. And you're prepared to spend the time to pattern, watch him. And then this is the unique part too, is when you move in on the animal, you do everything you can to move in, but in a way that he'll never know you're there.
Mm-hmm.
And if it requires risking getting caught by the buck, you won't do it. That brings me to the question, now that you've killed the buck and you've done it, that day we were hunting, I shot my buck that same day, and you shot your buck, and the weather was incredible that day. It was perfect. I mean, just enough wind that it covered the sound, and also it held the wind direction the whole time.
The entire time. It was moving south to north. It was noisy. It was just
so fast forward to the last 4 days when Brinker's been trying to kill a buck, and you don't have those conditions, which is really what I was under last year. the wind kind of shifts quite a bit throughout the day. It blows one way and then it blows another way and it blows another. How do you get close enough to kill it and not get caught when the wind is so fickle?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, as far as when it's fickle, man, that's really tough. The only strategy, like I've said a couple times, the only strategy that makes sense on these bucks with a bow is getting in as close as you can and letting them come your direction. You know, if the wind's fickle, that's just not going to work.
So you're just going to sit back probably?
Yeah, I think so. You know, just watch and wait, and hopefully you've got some days to burn. Yeah, but you got sometimes we only had one spectacular hunting day while we've been here as far as wind goes, for a stalking type day where you could actually stalk in on these things, and we both took advantage that day.
Yep.
You know, like I said, I think you could go 10 years in here and not get a perfect day like that.
Yeah.
So typically I don't know how fickle the wind's going to be. I think there's going to be a directional of some sort, whether it's the thermals up or down, some semblance of a directional wind, right?
Certainly in the mornings and the evenings toward first light and last light, you're going to get a more reliable wind. And down in that canyon draw, you're going to get, if he goes down there rather than up top where it's swirling all the time, but down low, that wind will suck down.
Yeah, just, you know, just like a mule deer playing thermals. If they start to get winky, just get the heck out of there and try to come back in a better situation. But yeah, I think patience killing the buck. I mean, as cliche as it is, it's just so dang true, you know. Being slow and deliberate in your actions and thinking everything through and just being overly patient, I think helps. I think where I know I screwed up many times was in that last 50 yards or 80 yards or whatever. That's where you just feel it welling up. Like you're right there. You're so close. I just got to get another 10 feet, but typically that's where it all goes
downhill
and it blows up. And then you wish, why didn't I just wait? And now you may not see that buck for the rest of the trip.
I actually like the idea of all of this. It feels right to come out, look at this countryside, watch a deer, see where he lives, figure him out. You know, there's a certain enjoyment that comes from this.
Yeah.
But you mentioned something else earlier that I think has really impeded my approach to a lot of this, and that is you hunt solo a lot. And when you hunt solo, you approach your hunt differently. I found that when I don't have a cameraman following me and I'm not trying to film my hunt and there's not people helping me stalk a deer or spot a deer, then I'm just on my own.
Right.
I'm way more lethal.
When you go slower, you have way more patience. At least I've noticed that. You don't have that added pressure of thinking about, are these guys in a hurry? Am I taking too long?
Am I keeping them away from their hunt?
Keeping them, away from dinner. It's like, when I'm by myself, it's like, I'm just going to do it till dark and then get out. No added pressure. You don't thinking about someone else.
You're not imposing on anyone doing what you do.
And you feel bad, if you're somebody and it's like an 8-hour stalk or whatever.
People want to hang out when you get back to camp.
At hour 7, you're really thinking, man, what does that guy think of me right now? He'd probably rather be going off hunting somewhere else and, doing something. But, when you're by yourself, you don't have those added worries. And you just, I for myself anyway, is not for everybody, but you just end up not worrying about time so much. You've got all day. Nobody's expecting you to do something that, and you should just do what you're doing and take as much time as it takes.
Yeah, you treat time out here a lot differently when you're by yourself.
Yeah, in fact,
it's a slower pace.
That first day, I brought you guys over here to look at that buck. You kind of watched me stalk down in there in that draw. And even at that, I felt pressure like, wow, these guys are up there watching that buck. I don't want to just drag this into the dark. I'm sure they kind of want to get back. I'm sure you guys weren't thinking that, but that's what I'm thinking about.
Like, right.
I need to go a little faster and try to get this done.
Why is he coming back? It's not dark yet.
Yeah.
Like the magic moment could happen at
At dark.
Yeah. And you were in a great position, and that deer was right above you.
Yeah. I felt like that was a case of there's no way that deer's going to come back down to where he just came from, down into the draw. And I did not know that the winds wouldn't blow him out.
Right.
Wanted to get out of there before it got too cold and the thermal started going down. So
you moved out. I'm anxious to come out and do a little more of this slower pace, patience, sneak in, kind of spend my time slow playing a single deer, relocating him on the mountain, patterning him a little bit. I'm looking forward to trying a little more, change up a little bit.
And I got to say, I mean, it's fun because you do pay attention more. You kind of learn their behaviors, their mannerisms, little things that each little group of deer does on that particular mountain. You're learning all day long when you're watching deer. And it's all kind of leading up to a strategy or a plan. And I just like it. I mean, especially this because it's totally new to me, totally foreign. Kind of treat it like a mule deer hunt that I'm accustomed to. And, lo and behold, it kind of worked out. But I just like the fact that it's a completely new critter. So I'm in that learning stage of trying to figure out what these deer, what's their range. Are they consistent using the same spots? How do they react with those? How long do they bed?
You're obsessed with Quaddamundi.
Oh, I cannot.
As they have now outsmarted you and outwitted
they're mystical
you.
And magical at this point. They have no rhyme or reason yet, which bothers me.
They're just mystical.
I Googled the other day how to hunt Quaddamundi.
And what popped up?
Your face came up. So
I'm an expert.
Asked you, and you couldn't tell me.
I'm an expert, man. I shot one with a bow and arrow.
There's no information. I'm trying to figure out, so how far do these males range?
Yeah.
Do they have a general location they stick to? Because, we see one in a valley. I want to know, is he going to be in that valley for a week? Is he going to be there until breeding season?
Mm-hmm. Do they move during the day or just
fascinated with them?
Are they crepuscular? I think that's how you say it. Where they move at dawn and dusk primarily.
Right. Yeah. So many questions, and the only way apparently, because there's just so little information out there on them, that going to figure it out is just to be out here watching them. I think what we've determined just by doing that is they can't hear very well, and if they want to be slinky and sneaky, they do it in a hurry, and they can just disappear. But gosh, you just see them with their tail out there, and it's like, that looks like it's easy to stalk in on. But somehow, with their magic powers, they disappear.
What do you think about the fact that in some of these really high mountain spots, where it gets really high, what do you think about the fact that we see no animals on those hills?
I cannot figure it out. This place is still somewhat of a mystery to me. I mean, I was talking to Jim with Arizona Game and Fish, trying to make sense of
he's a deer biologist.
Yeah, why the whitetail are on the tops, somewhat on the tops. They're not really, but they're up in these mountains, and we haven't seen a mule deer up here at all. And the mule deer back down close to town and
in the desert flats.
The desert flats. It's just so reverse from what we're used to. And he said, if you figure it out this week, let me know, because they have no idea. It's such a weird deal, because this looks like mule deer country to me.
Right. And
if this was Nevada, I'd expect to see some big old mule deer bucks up here.
And when we glass these big tops, it's void.
We're up here.
It's void.
But there's a level where these deer are, and then we can look up this big peak here, and
mountains as far as you can see.
Yeah, 1,000 feet of absolutely no critters. I've yet to see any critters above a certain level, and I can't figure out why. I mean, the terrain looks real similar. It's just like there's a certain level where the deer are, and then nothingness.
Our guess, and this is pure conjecture. That's our word.
We've done more conjecture.
Lots of conjecture. What I love is when we're hunting and it's like, and we'll sit there and go, oh, dude, those javelina, they've got to be right in that ravine because they wouldn't leave. And then they're probably down there because there's that water hole, and then they go into those trees right there. Mm-hmm. And it's like, based on what? based on what expert knowledge? And it's like, yeah, pure conjecture.
Pure conjecture.
It's flat out guess. We have nothing to really base it on except gut hunch.
On these new animals, there's a lot of pure conjecture.
There is, like Coatimundi.
Yeah. And
he likes these kinds of trees. Right. They like these kinds of trees, and they like to roam in these rocks. And then we see one in the desert flat near none of that stuff.
Yeah, apparently, you were supposed to just find coati in these rocks. Real easy. Kind of like you found them last year.
I found them there last year.
No problem.
The suckers.
Find the troop. Find the big old male.
That's right.
We have not seen a troop.
No.
We've looked at all the areas where you've seen them last year.
I haven't heard anybody talk about a troop. I wonder if when I was here, which is 2 weeks later than now, last year,
right?
I wonder if they were more breeding then than they are now.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were more visible because they're rutting, I don't know.
No idea.
Pure conjecture. That's the case. It was absolutely the case.
All intentions of becoming a Coatimundi expert because I am going to spend countless hours researching when I get home.
And the thing is I did get back and start researching because I'd never heard of the darn animal until last year.
Yeah.
I even radioed the Arizona Game and Fish guys or called them, and I was like, guys, whoa, what's this monkey thing?
Yeah.
That I see in these flats and in the grass, and they're like, oh, that's a Coatimundi. I'm like, a what? They're like, yeah, you can shoot that. Now, actually, what Wade said was, kill it if you can.
Kill it if you can.
So.
Well, and they don't really know. They don't see them very often.
No. In fact, a couple of them have never seen one.
We've seen 4 males. You and I have this week.
Yep.
Everybody else in the big old group that we've had hasn't seen.
They've never seen one
in the lower country. So no, complete mystery.
Pretty wild.
I don't know if it's just complete randomness that these big old males move around these mountains. I have no idea. It's frustrating,
but it's also
over time we will
put the puzzle together.
Yeah, the pieces to this Coatimundi.
Yeah, it's tough because we don't really know where to hunt them, where to be, how to go about it. It's just like, oh, there's one.
Right.
And it could be that's going to be the case for a long time because guess what? It's just a rare. That's a buck.
Where you at?
In the big saddle with the trees that come down. Big swath of green that goes into the brown.
Yeah.
He's on the backdrop.
Gotcha.
Of the hill there in the crevice, about to walk behind the mountain. So yeah, the coati are just a mystery, but how fun is this to like spend time learning about it and
I love it.
And just no,
this whole state, I came down here the intention of learning about these deer, learning about the coatis, all the different species they have down here, the Mearns quail. I just wanted to see something different, venture this unique country and learn. And I've done nothing but learn all week, every little new animal that we see and all this new country. But no, it's a lot of fun. I get a kick out of it. It's what keeps it exciting, new country, new state, new species. Man, just always stuff to learn and figure out.
If you were to summarize the approach you had on this hunt, as far as the philosophy goes for hunting mature bucks like this, what are like 5 takeaways or 5 things that you would do?
So, obviously this country, optics are huge. I'm running 18s, and I've really never been in country where I needed 18s, but I'm using 18s, and it's really helped me pick out these little deer, especially in the oak brush. That has been just money. Usually I'm using 12s, and I've ran 12s a little bit, but on the tripod, the 18s are you just pick stuff out.
Yeah, these are 15s.
Yeah. So, good glass is definitely a good takeaway. One of the biggest takeaways is, good spotter or good binoculars and obviously a good tripod. Glassing too quickly.
Mm-hmm.
I know I glassed over the first couple days, I glassed over deer, glassed over bucks.
Yeah.
Just not taking enough time because, mule deer jump out at you. You can scan them out pretty dang fast. These deer, they just don't. I mean, they're hard to pick up. You get your game eyes after a few days, and still, it's like you can look at a hillside, and then all of a sudden you're glassing it for an hour, and you're like, she was there the whole time.
The whole time, yeah. Or what's like you said earlier, you'll see one, you'll look away, and you'll come back, and you cannot find it to save your life. Yet it hasn't gone anywhere.
Yeah, that'd be, thing I learned. If you see a buck that you want to bed down and try to make a play on, don't ever take your eyes off him. That first day, I watched that buck for hours.
Yeah.
And I feel like if I ever was going to take my eyes off, he was going to disappear and I wouldn't be able to pick him back up.
Absolutely.
So
once they lay down, they lay down, they're gone.
Yeah. You're basically on the glass constantly, not looking around, not ever even looking over at this mountain for a couple minutes. You basically just have to stay on him the entire time.
So glassing and glassing too quickly, the right power, staying on a buck.
Yeah.
Okay. I got that. So what about, back to the question that was asked about, okay, guy's pretty skilled hunter. He kind of knows what he's doing, and he's done this many times, and he plays the wind and he does all this stuff, and yet somehow you're able to kill giants on each hunt, and he has a hard time killing animals of that age class.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
I don't know. That's hard to answer. I just think it's a combination of a lot of different things, things that we've talked about with the patience, and having days is huge.
Mm-hmm.
I try not to ever, short myself on days on a hunt, especially new country, because typically, this hunt wasn't typical, but typically you're really just starting to figure it out after a week. And, that's why so many hunts, you end up killing your deer on the second to last day or the very last day. You're just starting to figure it out. So having days to burn, that's pretty obvious, but it's also extremely important. I would not want to come down here for 4 days. You may just be presented with lousy conditions, and it's just not going to have a time frame where you can make it happen during that. So, I think
that makes sense.
I think that's big.
How big is hunting solo?
Hunting solo is huge, just because you can play the patience game even more so. We all hunted together somewhat,
and it was fun. But we were solo too.
Did you notice I drove my own truck down here?
Oh yeah, I noticed that. Yeah. Which I was like, we could carpool somewhat, but I'm so glad you did, because I don't want to. I'm pretty independent myself.
Sure.
Sure. You want to go hunt this ridge? It's like, well, I actually want to go over here. So here's an idea. You go do you, and I'll go do me.
You hop in your rig, I'll hop in mine. We'll go glass different places. And
that was actually fun, because we could still communicate via InReach, Garmin InReach. We could still talk to each other.
Well, put it this way. If we hadn't had two different rigs, we probably both wouldn't have tagged out that day.
Yeah.
Because we were somewhat close to each other here. You were just over the hump, and I was over here, but, we were separated. So
the other guys, that were hunting together, they kind of ran into that where, Chesser wanted to hunt predators.
Yeah.
With and do some calling and all that, and this place is just perfect for that. But the other guys had deer tags, and they're trying to kill a deer, and you got one rig, it makes that tough. Yeah. I
think splitting up and just getting out there and doing your thing, and
so being independent
from other people going other places.
Independent and hunting solo, that's big. Maybe huge. That's why you kill big bucks and some other people don't.
Just selfish and
what else?
Yeah, introverted. That's what I am. Introverted. I just like being off with myself. Gosh, what else? Taken away from this trip, don't wear a puffy anywhere if you're walking, or you'll end up with a lot of feathers.
Oh man, everything here stabs you.
Yeah, I made the mistake of wrapping it around my waist one time just to move glassing positions, and dude, everything, even down at knee level, grabs you and rips and tears. My arms are just shredded. It looks like I got in a fight with a cat. But
I think what you do a lot of times is you figure out where you glass until you find that animal, and then once you do, you're like a dog with a bone. You're not letting go. You're going to just keep pounding your head against the wall until you find it.
I think that's
stay on it.
That's been the MO for a long time. Just take this year, for example. Had a great year. Everyone was real similar in that, and I don't know why this is the case, but I found, say, Colorado. I found a buck early, found him very early in the hunt, but he just didn't put himself in a good spot. It took 8 days before he put him in a real stockable spot. I only had one stock on that buck, and it was just, again, it was so, every move was deliberate. Everything was extremely cautious and really slow. I bring up sloth like a lot because that you feel like a sloth.
I think there's a lot of guys who don't track a buck that many days in a row at all. Like they see him and then he's gone. And they're like, okay, it's over.
Sure.
Now it's time to find another one. He went over this ridge.
Yeah, and I think it's easy to give up on something if you have a half a day where you can't relocate him.
Yeah.
But having the confidence and just knowledge, I know mule deer pretty well. I usually can find them again. Maybe not that day, but
you really located
the next day.
Coues bucks all the time.
Yeah.
You were able to that's that same one, and that's that one, and that's that one, and
right. Yeah, I think just having confidence to assume that they're still there, and you just have not found them yet.
Yeah,
it's going to be on you to pick them out because I know when I was young, I could scan a hillside and really quickly give up and just say, "Oh, he moved. He's gone."
Right.
I'm going to run to a different mountain.
Right.
That's probably the worst thing you could do because then it just feels like you're always moving. You're always giving up on a spot, and that buck was there the whole time. You just didn't give him a shot to show himself, or you just didn't do your due diligence and find him. So I think that's pretty big, is having confidence that you got the stamina and the patience and the glass to pick that buck back up and keep on him.
Yeah, I agree. Well, we should probably wrap up this podcast. It was just scratching the surface. Because there's a few more things I need to ask you and learn from you. Lots of questions came in, and we didn't really get to any of those. From the gear you're using to, again, more details about some of these approaches.
I think you said somebody had a wind checker question for
wind
me.
Checker to broadhead and arrow setup, to bow, to rangefinder, questions galore. So. And I have my answers, but I want to hear yours. So let's do another one here before we leave, before you head back to Montana.
Away from this 65-degree weather, heading back to single digits.
How great is this hunt, though? You get to hunt in a t-shirt, with a bow and arrow in January.
It's January. It feels like summertime out here. It's just, it's fun. I mean, it's so addicting. Just, while we're trying to learn about these Coues deer, learn their behaviors, you just get to see new country and just, man, it doesn't get any better. I mean, the weather's just great. It's not raining. It's not foggy. It's not snowing, sleeting in January.
Yeah. What surprised me each year I've come now is, though, that the evenings kind of suck.
Well, yeah, for example, we've seen one buck and a coyote. We just have mornings are by far they've been our best. Yeah, it's that day it was cold and windy, there was quite a bit of rutting. And if you find a deer and a buck in the mood, and they're going to chase, But in general, the mornings are spot on. You need to be in your spot before daylight because they're moving they're moving in the dark. They're moving. And then it's good till about 10:30. Right. Maybe 11, depending on how hot the day. Today was the hottest day I think we've had. It was hot. Yeah. It was upper 60s.
I just look at this and I think, quite a bit of country here to glass, and it's good for 2 or 3 hours in the morning. And when the sun pops up, they're in this grass. They just They just shine like a diamond.
They do shine like a diamond.
And you spot them, and you're like, oh, there's one. Got it. And you're everywhere, and then within a couple hours after daylight, they are done.
Yeah.
They're done.
They're
and your day is
you're looking for ears flicking in
and
oak brush.
And your day is done if you don't know where they're at.
Right. Yeah. No, it's phenomenal country. I'm bummed out that I haven't learned this earlier. It's like I'm just finding this place. I've heard about it and heard Randy Newberg talk about it on his podcast, and everybody says, "Oh, it's just amazing country," and it's not until you get down here and you realize, yeah, this is pretty special for January.
It is.
I mean, we pretty much, like you said, had it to ourselves. You get to see animals, get to learn stuff.
And we haven't mastered it yet because the goal is to come down here and take a Coues deer, take a javelina, take maybe a coyote or bobcat or something, take a coatimundi, hunt for some Mearns quail and some ducks, get lots of different hunting in jackrabbits, antelope jackrabbits that are the size of a small child.
And they're delicious.
And
fixed right.
Javelina and all these critters, right? And bring home a bounty of unique and interesting wild game to eat at home and cook using Hank Shaw's cookbook. There's a plug, Hank. Love Hank. And or the Meat Eater. And it's like we came down and we shot a Coues deer and some birds.
Since then we've been glassing up a lot of Coues deer, which is cool. We're still learning, but we haven't shot any predators. We did shoot some Mearns quail.
We missed some rabbits.
We missed range.
Yeah. So I feel like I didn't kill a javelina. It's time to go home, and it's like there's.
Well, I'm okay. This coatimundi has driven me crazy all week.
Yeah.
I just feel like if we were any good, we would have made it happen.
We had our opportunity, and we completely were
so
unprepared.
Close so many times.
Like, do you keep looking over there tonight, like where we saw him?
Yeah, just right there.
I just keep looking,
right where he slinked past us the other day
at 20 yards, 10 yards.
But no, I'm excited. I think not getting this coati this year. I've got a fire in my belly to get back down here and try to make it happen again.
All right, let's get on. After we got some last minute spotting to do tonight, and it's the witching hour. We'll see what happens. Thanks for tuning into the Gritty Podcast, folks. Really appreciate it. As always, stay gritty.
Stay gritty.